Hi there, welcome back for week 7 of our In the Waiting study. We've just got these 2 lessons left, and you will have made it through the entire 40 days of this study. That is 40 days of digging deep into this topic of waiting and paying attention to the stories of those in Scripture who waited, all the while as we have been drawing near to God in our season of wanting. And for the last few weeks, we've been especially focused in these teaching videos about tuning in to those elements of waiting that we don't always consider, or maybe we've never even thought that they were part of waiting. We've talked about bravery and courage and strength. And this week we're going to hit on one more unexpected piece of waiting, and that is love. Would it surprise you if I told you that love is an essential part of waiting? It surprises me. I remember another high school story for you. I was having a really down season, and I don't remember why, but I remember very distinctly sitting in my bedroom, the door was closed, and I was having a conversation with the Lord. I was writing out in my journal about how I felt lonely and how I just needed a hug. And one of my pet peeves with the Lord, I am a physical touch person. And it's been really difficult at various points in my life to not be able to always receive love from him in physical ways. And he does work through people, and he does manifest himself in physical ways, but sometimes it would just be really great for me to have Jesus like right here in the flesh and just give me a hug. And so little high school Jasmine was journaling about how sad she was that, she just needed a hug from God. I just needed a hug from God. And while I'm still in the act of journaling, my mom taps on my bedroom door, comes in, walks over, leans over, and gives me a hug. And all she says is, "I just felt like I needed to give you a hug." Then she walked out, and I was left completely dumbstruck. I look at the words in my journal that I had just written about wishing God would just come over and give me a hug. And while that hug came through the arms of my mom, it felt like God's love abundantly lavished on me in that moment. You might be familiar with a chapter in the Bible we call the love chapter, and that is 1 Corinthians 13. And this chapter outlines what love looks like, the characteristics of love, and it's told in the context of spiritual gifts. Paul is talking about the different gifts of the Spirit and all the different ways people in the church community may be empowered by the Spirit to move and serve. But he says, none of that's going to matter if there's no love in it. And frankly, dear heart, if we get what we want, if we get everything we're waiting on, but we don't know love, we don't know how to love, we don't know how to give love, to receive love, and we aren't certain of God's love, all of it's not going to amount to much of anything. Waiting requires love. It requires for us to enter into love, and it requires us to love even while we're waiting. So we're going to read 1 Corinthians 13 together. And I want you to hear these words, even if they're familiar. Hear them in the context of waiting. What attribute of love might you require in this season? And what attribute of love is God asking you to give in your waiting? Let's read this together, starting in 1 Corinthians verse 1. If I speak human or angelic tongues, but do not have love, I am a noisy gong or a clanging cymbal. If I have the gift of prophecy and understand all mysteries and all knowledge, and if I have all faith so that I can move mountains, but do not have love, I am nothing. And if I give away all my possessions, and if I give over my body in order to boast, but not have love, I gain nothing. Love is patient. Love is kind. Love does not envy, is not boastful, is not arrogant, is not rude, is not self-seeking, is not irritable, and does not keep a record of wrongs. Love finds no joy in unrighteousness, but rejoices in the truth. It bears all things, believes all things, hopes all things, endures all things. Love never fails. But as for prophecies, they will come to an end. As for tongues, they will cease. As for knowledge, it will come to an end. For we know in part and prophesy in part, but when the perfect comes, the partial will come to an end. When I was a child, I spoke like a child, I thought like a child, I reasoned like a child. But when I became a man, I put aside childish things. For now we see only a reflection, as in a mirror, but then face to face. Now I know in part, but then I will know fully, as I am fully known. Now these three remain: faith, hope, and love. But the greatest of these is love. I wonder if you were to replace all of those spiritual gifts with the things you're waiting on. That relationship, that reconciliation, that financial provision, that miracle, that healing. Those things are good, and they're good to want, just like it's good to want the gifts of the Spirit. But those things will end eventually. That relationship will end, that money will run out, the body will weaken. But love continues. Love endures. Love lasts. So, dear heart, I have to ask you, what does love look like in your waiting? Are you loving well? Are you being patient and kind? Are you not keeping a record of wrongs in your waiting? Are you able to receive that? And specifically, are you able to receive that from the Lord? Are you able to receive that His love is patience, that His love is kindness, that His love endures? Or are you questioning that love? Are you struggling to receive it? Are you struggling to give it? Are you so focused on getting that thing that love is forgotten? I know it's not the most expected element to talk about when we're studying waiting, but it's part of it. When we can love well, we can wait well. When we receive God's love and we know that what is happening in our lives, that even the absence of those things we don't yet have is still an act of God's love, of His abundance, of His favor, that helps us wait well. So, I want to challenge you in this season, press into love. Sit in 1 Corinthians 13 for a long time if you have to. Read it every day. Allow these words to apply not only to the broader piece of life, but also to your waiting seasons. Waiting is meant for loving well and being loved well by God.